Hey everybody, my 18-month-old daughter loves bubbles, and I mean loves them. I think she loves them more than me. So I decided that it would be a really fun project to try and build a bubble making machine. Now, I learned a lot with this build. It was not a huge success. It did produce some bubbles and it was a fun build, and it taught me a lot about what I need to do for the next one. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and post this video anyway and let you guys check it out because it is a pretty cool build. All the components I needed for this build I was able to pick up from the big box store. Well, except for the bubble solution. I started with a plastic container that I could fit a 5-gallon bucket in with the head of it cut off, and carved out a concave section in the back of one side of it. I needed to carve this out so I could fit a Lazy Susan in here later. After that was done, I drilled a small hole to put a spigot in. That way I could drain the fluid out when I was done using it. Or when my daughter was done using it. So, once I had the plastic container all milled to the size I needed, I built a 1/2-inch plywood frame around this container to kind of keep everything in, and I would be able to mount some components to this later. Now this project was pretty much a swag build from start to finish. If you don't know what swag means, it's scientific wild-ass guess. I really didn't start with any measurements or drawings, I just kind of built it off the cuff. So after I had the box built, I needed to find a way to mount the bucket on its side so it would spin. And to do that, I just used a simple Lazy Susan and then marked out where the bucket needed to be on the box, marked out the center point, and then cut out a circle roughly the size of the inside diameter of the Lazy Susan. This way I could reference that hardware to it later and make sure it was mounted in the right position. Once that was done, I attached a 1/2-inch piece of plywood to the Lazy Susan and marked the center and drilled a hole in it as a reference point. Then I attached the Lazy Susan to the box and the bucket to the Lazy Susan. And I just drilled some holes with, and then added some screws in and attached it to that plywood that I've already attached to the Lazy Susan. Now to drive this whole thing, I'm using a rotisserie motor. They do have some high torque, low revolution motors that are battery powered online. I didn't order one, and I'm definitely going to order one for the next build. Having 110 power next to something that's got bubble solution is not the greatest idea, so I have to keep a really close eye on my daughter when she's playing with it. When that was done, I just used a marker and marked out some lines incrementally, about every 1.5 inches, 2 inches or so, and then some perpendicular lines as well. And these are just marks where I'm going to drill holes. So I took the bucket off the assembly and I started drilling holes, and I drilled a lot of holes. I used a 3/4 inch, which is a little bit larger than your average bubble blower thingy. I'm hoping that my bubbles would be a little bigger. Once that was done, I used a piece of drain pipe. This is actually rain gutter pipe, and cut out a bunch of sections right in line with the holes where the bubbles were going to be made. Capped one end of it. And then to mount this thing, I just grabbed a scrap piece of plywood, kind of guesstimated where it needed to go, and then marked out the size for an opening and cut it out with a skill saw, or a jigsaw. Can't even get my tools right today. So once I had that done, I mounted the plywood kind of right about where I needed it, and then used that as kind of a reference point. So I put the drain pipe in afterwards and then moved it right into the position where it needed to be and attached it to that piece of plywood with some screws. Made sure everything was working good, and then I had to test it. So I used my shop vac as an air source, and sure enough, it made bubbles. Now there weren't a massive amount of bubbles like I was hoping for, but they did produce a pretty fair quantity of them, and of course it was more than enough to keep my daughter happy. And now for the real test. Gotta make sure she likes it.
Go get it.
So this build was not a great success, but I learned a lot about what I need to do next time, and I'm definitely going to build another one that produces a massive quantity of bubbles.